Hi, welcome to the Elle Rush Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at ellerush.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, just a quick 1-minute announcement to let you know about my virtual courses and free masterclasses. I have courses and free masterclasses based on both of my books. I have the Ultimate Thyroid Course. This is your answer to solving any thyroid issue, whether it be Hashimoto's, radioactive iodine, thyroidectomy after thyroid cancer, or just general hypothyroidism. Reverse T3 issues as well. It's an incredible value at 17 modules and 29 hours of content with amazing guest expert tutorials. I also offer the Ultimate Confidence Course. That is 15 modules and 14 hours with also a few guest expert tutorials. An incredible value, and I have free masterclasses on both of those topics as well. Visit ellerush.com to learn more. Yemi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elle. So excited to be here.
You have a really harrowing, interesting story, and you really did discover what you're truly capable of, and now that's really what you're helping other people do. So let's start with that beginning. I mean, from homelessness to CEO, we want to know everything.
Everything. It's funny, when you hear that in a line, it feels significantly more grandiose. And I've got to be careful because I might be my echo changer because I'm not in that situation now. Maybe it doesn't feel as big as it was then. But it was a really weird one. I had gone to uni, graduated, but I had managed to convince myself that this cannot be all there is to life. And trust me, it isn't. But I'm one of those experiential learners. And so I fell in love and we kind of planned a baby. I mean, I planned a baby at 25 and I don't know what memo or blueprint I was following, but that felt right. It felt right to do that. But when you find love when you go, and like I say, there was no memo that I was reading from. And got pregnant, and yeah, things started to fall apart. Once again, no one warned us of how difficult it becomes because you're still trying to get to know yourself. And the relationship started to struggle a bit, and being at home and having not followed the right memo, I say in inverted commas, which is to get married, 2.4 kids, white picket fence. We were guided by our families to get married, and we didn't want to do that. And so I was left with making the decision of having somewhere else to live. And it got to the point that I couldn't be at home anymore. There was a few sofa surfings at places, people's homes, but I think I got to the point thinking, wow, I didn't think my life was going to get this way. And then, yeah, I was sleeping on the deck of what we call the council housing, which is where our government gives, funding or homes to those who don't have one. And that was a low point. It was a low point because at some part I got put in what we call a halfway house, which is where those who are really struggling with drugs or, alcohol abuse and other substance abuse are put in there. And I don't think I'm any better than anybody else, but I was not prepared for what was going on there at, the ripe 7-8 month pregnancy. It was a dark moment, but I think I realized how much fights and flights in equal measure I have in me. But yeah, that's the juice. That's the juice on that. That's still so far away, but just retelling the story takes me back in there of, wow, that did happen. Look where you are now.
Well, right. Yeah. And not to relive any of that trauma, but just to say, not just a low point, the level of shame, worthlessness. You're now in the quote system, being taken care of by the gut, people donating that is when you're in a halfway house, you've hit your bottom. Okay. It really is. So, how long were you in that environment before you were able to, obviously that contrast mustered up a fire in you to do something different. Yeah. So tell us about when that occurred or that moment, or what were the thoughts and emotions going through your head when you're like, I cannot be here.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned shame. I just don't even remember mentioning it to anybody, maybe one or two friends. I think I was still, I was still working for a little bit and no one at work would have known. I mean, this is what's really fascinating because I think some people think you can be homeless and have no job. I had a job. I mean, and just even thinking about it now, it really goes to question how we've set up society. But there was definitely shame because that didn't make sense. I mean, we assumed if you were homeless, then it was mainly because you had done something wrong, quote unquote wrong,
That's
whether that's
right.
drugs or alcohol. Once again, it was just this one single story. So the shame was definitely there. But I guess what I did was, while I was pregnant, because I was probably in and out of that situation for about 6 months. When I couldn't stay in the halfway house, I would stay at a friend's. But just kind of really, but to be honest, I got desperate. I got so desperate that I was at the queue every morning. And I'm really good. Like, I connect with people really well. I had to do everything in my power to connect with the officer to say, please just get me a home. I need a home where I feel safe in the community. Um, and it was actual real vulnerability, before Brene Brown made that word so usable. It was real vulnerability, saying, I need this. I don't think I'm better than anyone else, but I need this. I've got a job. If I can pay the minimum rent, because I can't pay the rent that these big people, landlords, are asking for. I don't know what world we live in, that people's genuine average salary can't even afford rent, because it
Yes.
needed to be council housing. It needed to be the government subsidy. My salary would just not have stacked up. So I got really vulnerable and kind of, in a weird way, laid out a plan for the officer I was speaking to. And that maybe must have done something for him. Maybe he was impressed that, I even had a goal oriented kind of mind. And I didn't know where the end goal was, but this is my next immediate goal. Just get a home where you can be with your daughter.
What was the moment that you realized things were actually going to turn around for you? That things were starting to hold on, I might be able to stop this struggle, which we'll get back to, because talking about the struggle and then always being in a position where you're drawing things that require struggle is a thing. But just what was that moment when you realized, ooh, hey, things are looking up, like I can afford a new place, like, moving up?
Oh, would you believe me if I told you about a year ago? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. My daughter's 15 years old now, and she's the one I was pregnant with when I was in that stage. And look, I'm genuinely not joking. I turned 40 on Saturday, and I'm so excited because I don't know what it feels like. It feels like I've arrived. I'm more certain about myself than I've ever been. I have more clarity in the direction and joy. So I've just been rolling with stuff. Even, when we'll get to it, the businesses I've opened, I never once really thought, oh, I've arrived, things are looking up. I just thought, keep on going. Just keep on going. I don't think I've ever stopped long enough to pause.
Yeah.
But if I was to scale it back and just kind of feel this, because I've lived in Japan, there's so much has happened in between. It always felt like I was unsettled. But where I felt safe was probably the first day I moved into that property. And I think they gave me furniture. I even got a furniture allowance, which was really great. That would have just made me feel, okay, you're okay for now. But it was a do not rest. And in you asking that question, I don't think I've rested up until about a year, maybe 2 years ago, where I've been like, okay, Yemi, you've proved yourself now. You can do it on your own as a single parent. You're okay. You can probably go and sell some sand in the Middle East. Like, that's the skill I've managed to pick up. So it's still very fresh out.
I love that. And also just brings such great hope and inspiration to everyone listening, that these things take time. And also, yeah, I love that spirit of, hey, no, don't rest just when things get good. Get to that point. Keep going.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this inherited story of struggle. A lot of people have this, and then we seem to constantly be attracting large struggles and challenges, something to constantly conquer. This is often the problem with alpha females in general and alphas. And it's so interesting. I see it in certain people's lives who have the struggle story. It's everything from, like, every virtual assistant they hire is terrible. Every work thing, like, it never works out. There's always a struggle with even the small things and then the large things. And so much of it is self-inflicted and self-perpetuated. So let's I'll open it up there about this struggle story and what you recognized.
Yeah, that struggle story. I think I just picked these up, especially from the women in my family, the aunties who, like you say, great. I mean, I get a lot of my strength from the matriarchal side of my family, not just seeing what they do, but feeling it from baby. And I can't remember, someone in the family just said, it's just life. Because I remember asking, but why does everything have to seem and be so hard? And there was this shrug of it's just life. And I think there was a reference to a comment in the Bible. And I know that the Bible has its own interpretations, but it just didn't sit well with my soul. I just thought, I mean, even if we were just going to be really mediocre about how we showed up, on earth, something doesn't sit well with my soul that we're meant to struggle. We either are, receiving struggle differently, or there should be a different way. But it just didn't make sense. However, I think I inherited that for a while. I inherited that by creating struggle in relationships. And when I say create, doesn't mean I take responsibility 100%. It means halfway I was meeting with struggle.
Sure.
I now have a completely different way of managing my relationships, especially the difficult ones. But I came with that with struggle. Thankfully, in work, I've got a dear friend who always has a manager who is just horrible. And after the third time, even though I hadn't started my whole personal development, I was going to say, but wait, you are the constant in all of this. Do you think it's possible to check? And that was when I became aware of our own patterns. I think from that acceptance, whether innately at birth, somewhere along our childhood, of accepting struggle, we start to create patterns where we either actively go and seek out people who can validate life as a struggle, just so we can feel right. And that was when I started to get really interested in personal development and studying things like neuro-linguistic programming. But I think that's why, belief systems is a big part of any of the keynotes I give or workshops, because if you don't even know you have something working at a cellular and subconscious level, you're just going to keep on thinking the world is doing you wrong. And I think we've got to let go of some of those inherited beliefs.
What's an example of something that back in the day you used to have think about in a way that now you're like, oh my gosh, this is how I think about that now. In hindsight, being able to recognize negative limited thinking, right? So I'd love to hear some of those, because there might be people listening that are like, I have that thought all the fucking time too,
I love it. I think there are two things that came up for me. I think one is the worthiness.
Yes.
I wouldn't have given it that vocabulary or that title because I wouldn't have even known what it was, but it was very obvious physically that I would struggle to walk into a room with my head high. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't, most of the time, didn't want to be heard. And as a result, I never got to practice just being me. I never got to, tap into that real genius and brilliance that I have. And I'm not talking academically now. I'm just talking just as a being. The worthiness thing was huge. But it was until, once again, about 7, maybe 8 years ago, that I really started to do the work on, I have a place as much as anybody else. I mean, I've started now doing a few presentations where key people in Australia, I'm sharing a stage with them. And I actually know that I belong. Yes, they are amazing. They are brilliant, but I belong. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, I would have questioned my worth. Are you sure? They chose me over another speaker. And once again, I'm no better. But back in the day, I'd have been like, you sure? You sure you don't want to get him? Everybody knows him. He's the one that's been, teaching the world champion of tennis over here. He's amazing. And then bring myself down. But it's weird. I don't have those thoughts anymore. I just know I'm worthy.
Yeah. That reminds me briefly of years ago, there was like this big conference, and people, in the health industry, which I wrote my first book on, were speaking at, and someone invited me to that event. I hadn't been chosen to speak. And someone asked me if I wanted to go to the event. I was like, no, I'm only going when they ask me to speak. I'm only going as a speaker. I already was like, yeah. And then of course I got invited the next year or whatever, but I was like, yeah, no, I belong on the stage, not as an attendee.
And so did you feel right? Do you feel that as a result of being clear and that's what you wanted, it came to you?
I mean, sure. I still anyone could chalk it up to like, oh well, then you had a successful book, and of course they chose you the second year or whatever. But still, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going unless I didn't want to go unless I was
Mm,
speaking. I was like, no, I don't feel right
yeah,
about. Didn't feel right to be an attendee. Felt right to be a speaker. Was going to wait until that happened.
yeah.
But
I feel
again,
that
just
way as
owned it. I
well.
was I already felt worthy before I even got the opportunity, um,
Love it.
and then I didn't feel weird when I was speaking with all of those people. I was like, no, I'm meant to be here. Yeah, I love
Yes,
that. I love that you
yes.
mentioned that. That's a great change. What are a few more other things or mindset shifts that you can really recognize the old you and some thinking into how you might think about a situation now?
Yeah, you might be surprised with, especially with your work in the health thing. I think it was accepting my body.
Yes, that's a big one.
Um, yeah, it was accepting my body. I'm still going through it, and I definitely would be looking into some of the things you offer. I'm looking at pictures, I'm looking at my body journey. And now that I do research in trauma, it's really interesting because,
Mhm.
one aspect is the body keeps the score, really holds where,
Yes.
can tell a story of where our trauma or how our trauma is being held. But I think over time, I really didn't, I just saw my body as just this entity. I really didn't give it the respect it deserved. Didn't give it the love. It's not even the respect, the love she deserved. And I think what's changed over time is even when I know, okay, yeah, get on that health kick, you need to be healthier, I still love on my body. I see her as, and I know it feels like I'm separating from, but I feel like I'm having to give that love and attention. I see her as someone who's literally got me through the good times and the bad times, and she still stays by me. On top of that, having children, sometimes dealing with stress, and then being able to bounce back when I make the conscious effort to eat consciously. So that has changed over time, which is to see, honor, respect, and love my body. Um, Even though, she has changed over the past couple of decades. That's been a big one for me. But that journey's still quite young. It's still quite young, but it feels like it's the theme for my 40s. So
Mhm.
I can't wait to dive into that a bit more. But there's definitely a lot more love and respect. So that's another one.
Nice. What are impart some tools of self-empowerment and growth with us if people are like, what is it? Or, I mean, most of my audience would know, but I guess I would say like, if someone's just sort of lost or spiraling, they're like feeling like, what is there? This is just garbage limbo life. Uh,
Mm,
or even if they're like, okay, I saw that you were hating it back then in a halfway house. I may not be there, but I just don't know how to get ahead. Because, and we'll
mm,
talk about this in a minute, but you currently run a bunch of successful businesses. So you're an entrepreneur and have been able to do this solo, coming from where we just talked about. So where can
yeah.
someone start? What are some tools of self-empowerment?
I think the first thing, maybe, I mean, look, everyone's got different definitions, but it's becoming clear to me what self empowerment could look like for some. If you find yourself constantly looking outwards, somebody else to give you the answers, then it's to have the question as to why is that? Some of us don't want to make mistakes on our own terms. I think it's part of the blame culture. I think it's so much easier to do something that someone told you to do so that if it doesn't fail, then you've got an out. But we've got to get comfortable with failing. I think if we can go back to there, get
Yes.
comfortable with being the ones making decisions and saying, you know what, I'm going to go for this. I've heard your views, I've heard your opinions, really appreciate them. This is what I'm going to do, or this is not what I'm going to do. Self empowerment is being able to ask for opinions across the room, but still being the one to make the decision to push go or not to go. That for me is, in a simple term, self empowerment. When you do that, but you've managed the fear, because we all have an element of fear, some more than others. I didn't realize how big my fear was until I started my first real business in Australia about 8 years ago. I had my first ever panic attack. I thought it was adult asthma. It was bizarre. I went to my friend and said, I started to really struggle to breathe.
Yeah.
And this is, once again, is what the body keeps the score. And she looked at me and she said, Yemi, I think that's a panic attack. And then I
Mhm.
had to go see a doctor and a psychologist. So I didn't know, because I was just going to bulldoze my way through this if I had to. I didn't know that I actually had that much fear, that I had managed to stop my whole breathing mechanism that I had been doing effortlessly for over 3 decades. And that was when I realized, oh shit, this is a thing, and I'm going to need to learn to dance with it so that when I have to make another decision, um, I don't completely stop my whole breathing and start to struggle and take these really deep breaths. And it's taking years to get that back to be regulated because I was just out of touch. So I think where you can start is figuring out what is your biggest fear. You know, when I read the book or listen to the audiobook, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I've read that over, I don't know, about 20 years, and it definitely had different meaning. I didn't even hear anything about money or wealth in the book when I heard it this time. I actually just heard the 6 major fears, and I'm not sure if I'm going to remember all of them. I think there are more, but fear of ill health, fear of poverty, fear of death, fear of criticism. I can never remember the other 2, but you can easily just find it anywhere on Google or something. But those fears tend to be the most common ones. I'd say if you don't know where to start, just have the most honest inner dialogue with yourself. What is the most fearful thing that you are running away from that has you feel you can't start? And then you've just got to figure out how you deal with that fear. How I deal with mine sometimes is I go straight for it. I go straight for it because one of my biggest fears was dying without telling my family I love them. So I do my best to tell them I love them all the time. That way I kind of take that fear out. I self-empower myself to take that out by actually taking action. What is your worst fear? If it's not going to happen by taking or not taking an action, then just do it. But you've got to have the inner dialogue first.
This goes right into the great title of your book, which I think is hilarious. It's so good. It's so up my alley. It is, I want to get it right, but it's, did you get the memo? Because I fucking didn't, right?
Exactly like that.
And what you said right at the beginning of self-improvement is if you're looking for out there, right? You're looking for someone to give you the fucking memo. No one's going to give it to you.
Correct. Spot on.
And so this is where we have to do it ourselves. You have to make your own memo and figure it out. But I love the title of that book. Because I fucking did. I didn't get a memo. I didn't get a memo on anything. And guess what else doesn't come with memos? Entrepreneurship doesn't come with memos.
It doesn't. I mean, that book came about with even the title. I had a coach. She had come down from London. I met her in Melbourne, Australia. And as I was just kind of complaining about life, I don't know, I just took the coaching session on a rant. It just came out. I said, but did you, because I said, I'm trying everything. I'm doing everything according to the rules, according to the thing. You know, did you get a memo? Because I fucking didn't. And it literally was that. It felt like I was doing everything. I remember trying to be the dutiful partner, the dutiful wife, you know, let go of my engineering. I just thought maybe, I don't know, maybe I just messed this up. And then I realized that I was a star shape trying to fit myself into an oval. It was awkward. I thought, well, just create a star shape, I don't know, hole. Like, wouldn't that be better? And then I realized that no one had written a memo for that. And why would they? Because it's my own individual blueprint. It's like, for me, the memo is the blueprint. And I appreciate that we inherit some of the blueprint. I appreciate sometimes we just buy into it without asking any questions, or we didn't have a choice. But the minute you do, I mean, I'm trying to do this with my kids and I'm going to see how I go. But the minute you do feel you can have influence, just write your own memo. I do it all the time. And according to the standards of the world, it's absolutely crazy. I'm currently co-parenting my 8-year-old with my ex-husband. And he will have been with his dad for 1.5 years. And my heart breaks. My heart breaks for not having him with me. But my heart sings because he gets to spend time with his dad and his stepmom. That's not in a memo I've read. My daughter went and spent 6 months in the UK because the lockdown was hard as hell. And as a single parent with no family, I knew she needed the village. And some people, it didn't make any sense. I was pulling her out of school here to put her in school there. But subconsciously, I just knew she needed that. And my goodness, has it changed her confidence. She needed to see more people like her so she could have a reference point and not feel like she was different in Australia.
And what a selfless choice as a mother. That's the sacrifice that mothers should make. That's
agreed.
Absolutely the right thing. And that's tough. I've even heard like 35-year-olds be like, well, I want to live there, but, and you're like, well, why wouldn't you move? And they're like, well, because like my mom, you know, she needs me. Oh. And I was like, well, is your mom not cool with you like moving to another state? Well, no, she would. And you just think, you know, it's like, if I could talk to that mom, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
What do you think the mom should do?
Let your daughter go live her life. Like, you know what I mean? Like
the mum is stopping her.
Right. The mom,
of.
the guilt from the mom, the no, you can't,
Right.
you take care
Yeah.
of. And then it's not
Oh,
like
yeah,
the mom
yeah,
was in the hospital or anything. It was just like, and she was 35 and you're like, dude. And then I saw years later on social media, I saw that she moved, she traveled, like she traveled around the country with her fiance or something. And I was like, right on. She left Ohio. This is fantastic.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's such a selfless thing you did. It was the right thing because you knew exactly what that would provide and what was lacking in this really strange time we just had.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, you run successful business. Let's talk about your businesses. Tell us about the kind of businesses you've started and that you run.
Oof, oof, oof. Well, the businesses I used to run, my bio needs to be updated because I used to run them, but only within the past kind of month, maybe 6 weeks, I've let go of quite a few of them. Well, I say quite a few, I think two, maybe two and a half. But the businesses I did run started off with my engineering consultancy. That was the first one I set up because I realized that I was my product. When consultancies were giving me jobs, it was for the product that was Yemi. Yes, they would give me some training, but I knew there was a special source to me. This is where the worthiness came in.
Were you
And
engineering and product development? What kind of engineering?
It was engineering in the rail. So I'm a mechanical engineer, but I was focusing on engineering aspect systems of the rail industry. So they needed a new underground rail network here in Sydney, which is still being built at the moment. But they've never had one. And so I came in on that route. That was how I got my visa with a job, which was fine. But there were still elements of control I just didn't really like. And I think it was the easiest and scariest. That was when I found out about panic attacks, because I had never, ever, ever, ever decided to self-empower myself and find my own income ways. It was huge. And if I didn't get a job, then I just didn't know what I was going to do, because I still don't think I was managing my fear properly, because we were going to be homeless again. And so I didn't tell any family member, because the worst thing that was going to happen is, Yemi, you've been through this before. Do you really think this is a smart idea? And this is what cages us. But what I guess I didn't also say to anyone is that if I actually did this, I'm actually going to 20x my income. And I was already on a decent income. That's how much the risk is. I mean, what is it? Tony Robbins says, he explains that there might be milliseconds between the first and second place runner in a 100-meter sprint. But the difference between the prize money of the person who wins and comes first is huge, even though and that really was powerful to me. It's not just about the money, it was about the choices and decisions we make. And that's exactly what happened with my consultancy. The fact that if it wasn't successful, I couldn't get it off the ground, then I'd continue as I was, or I'd have to find a job, or might be in even more debt for a bit. But if I did make it succeed, I could do loads of things. And from that, I went on to open my gym in London. From that, I wrote my first book. Then I started coaching, clients in organizations. And then from that, what did I do? I started my first documentary. And then I always forget this, and my partner tells me, then the TEDx came up. Like, everything just was flowing because I really opened up to it. And I believe a lot of that came from that first business venture. Then I opened the cafe afterwards, after the documentary. And the cafe since I've closed down, that had struggles with Omicron variant that we had over here, but I was okay with that because I wanted to start into my PhD. And similarly, literally just let go of my directorship of the gym. I brought a partner on in 2020, and we'd both been directing it, but me very silent. And I'm going through a different phase now, which is do less but go deeper.
Well, and you talk about a formula for achieving more in less time. Give us a little bit of how we can do that.
If I can remember that, more in less time. I call it, I don't know whether this is one you saw, but I segment my day a lot.
Okay, tell us how that works.
So when there was a period when I was working on so many things. I was working on the gym, which was in the UK, and according to the time zone, it was better for me. Well, I could only really do the work in the evening. So I kind of compartmentalized my day. I had my gym in the morning, my meditation. I would typically work on my consultancy for a couple of hours, but what I did was make sure that's all I worked on. I didn't try to multitask. I need to get back to being good at that, but I didn't try to multitask. I literally segmented it so it would get its time. So if it was 2 hours worth of work, I focused on that and I was zoned in. And I kind of did that. Then I think the cafe, which came later, would have a couple of hours. I was also very clear that I didn't want to work in my businesses. I wanted to work on it. My engineering consultancy, I needed to work in it for a while because I was the brand. But when I started to have a team, I started to work on it and I'd meet with clients. So I just got very clear on the shifts. But the biggest thing that's helped me to do that was my meditation. The transcendental meditation, I have a busy mind. The theory is you do 2 lots of 20 minutes meditation a day. My mind could be busy for 16 to 17 of those minutes. But those 3 minutes of going deep somewhere, I don't know where it is, but it feels like I'm taken underground. It gives me clarity in the sense that I can solve problems that would potentially take me 4 days. I can solve it in 4 hours. And I'm not exaggerating. That for me is how powerful transcendental meditation in particular is. That's really helped. Segmenting and meditating has been monumental.
I like that too. I like compartmentalizing things. And also I used to be a crazy multitasker and it absolutely ruined my arms. Working too fast.
Really?
Humans are not meant to do this, typing, working, all this stuff. And what I realized too in understanding health is you can be multitasking a million miles an hour and like on fire with work and and you're not stressed in the sense that you feel any negative stuff, but your body's in fight or flight. And so I became a person who was like, ooh, multitasking can be harmful. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways. And it might be better to just go, even though you can do it and you're quote capable of it when you're in that mode, because sometimes I'd be doing like 5 things at once. I'd be like, I got it, go. And yes, I'm not like upset in that moment. But it's still a stress. Your body's like, what the hell, man? Chill out. Give it a minute, right? So I think it is even better to it's great to be a good multitasker, especially in cases of emergency or whatever. But sometimes we try to do so much in so little time. And I think it frazzles us to the point where I don't know if in the long term that's a positive thing. And also then you become more in the now when you compartmentalize and you're like, and then you're really focusing on that task at hand, right? And you can move maybe quickly from one to the other more effectively. But so sometimes multitasking is I think can be kind
more
of
harmful than not. Yeah. I agree. I'm reading this book called Stolen Focus at the moment. Absolutely blowing my mind. I mean, I still need to learn some things from it.
What's the name of the book again?
Stolen Focus.
Stolen Focus?
Yeah, really good. Really, really good. It just brings you back to just how much our focus is being stolen or we are allowing it to be stolen. I mean, I'll just give a very quick example. Someone, they talk about the person who designed the scrolling ability of web pages. Back in the day, you had to click to reload the next page. Now you've got this infinite scrolling that you go. And even Netflix, you watch one episode, you only binge watch because they no longer give you the choice. Well, they do kind of, but they now just go to the next episode without you needing to press a button. And so choice is being taken out. And until you start to see how that manipulation happens and how choice has been taken away from you, do you then become alert to it? So, I'm definitely need to change what I think is multitasking because I actually think it's taken away my focus on certain things.
Let's talk about some success stories and clients or people or organizations where you've coached with mindset, self-empowerment, transformation. Everyone always likes to hear a good 180, a good success story.
Yeah, organizations, it tends to be with individuals. I mean, one organization I'm working with at the moment that, but I'm definitely not the only one who's contributing, but it's been huge so far. They decided, PwC, one of the big consultancies in the world, PwC Australia, they've decided to take about 3,000 of their middle management staff on residentials in what we call the Hunter Valley. Beautiful landscape, just absolutely gorgeous. And they're calling it the outside, where they're trying to take them outside of the life as they know it to experience different things. Firstly, to connect with the indigenous land. So we have these amazing welcome to countries ceremonial and, some real deep teachings of how to connect with the country you're in and to not always focus on trying to figure out who you are, but, where you are. And I've delivered the content of kind of who am I, just for them to get curious about who they are and why they show up the way they do. And it's been phenomenal. It's part of a 5-week program. So every Sunday to Monday, I'm over there doing that. And I can already see the shift where people are like, I did not know there was an alternative way to be. This is what's blown my mind, Elle, is that sometimes when I'm doing my coaching stuff, I think, Yemi, surely everybody knows this. And once again, it's the risk of being in an echo chamber because you surround yourself with people who think like you.
That's right.
But there are people who don't even know there's a different perspective. And I'm not trying to get them to, well, I am in the way, to challenge the status quo, but to say, is it working for you? Are you about to now clip off the wings of your star shape so you can fit into an oval? And so that's been profound. And even though it's still really early days, you can already see the shift in their mind. You can literally see something turning in their mind. Other impacts that I definitely feel that I've had, it's probably been with some individual clients of someone who didn't think they were confident enough to speak or wanted to get on the TEDx stage. And we start to work on the law of attraction, which I think is 100% scientific, but for some reason we've just decided to dumb it down by referring to it as woo-woo. The Einsteins and all those did the work on it, and just working with him for a couple of weeks, he got an invitation to deliver a TEDx talk. That's been quite powerful to see what happens when I open up and my client opens up and gets what they want. And if they don't get what they want, they get what they need. That's been really good.
I love it. And so tell us, how can we benefit more from your work? Obviously, you have this book. How do you do coaching? How can we work with you? Tell us. I mean, obviously, we'll put everything in the show notes to connect with Yemi, but it's YemiPenn, right? .com is your website.
Yeah, correct.
Very Penn. And so that's where you can go to find everything. But tell us, how can we work with you?
I think the best way, definitely go onto my website. I mean, it's really weird. I think this is another way of self-sabotage. There is a link where you can book a call with me, but you'd probably have to check the resources. So we can have, just chat to see whether, firstly, I am the right one. I'm very different with my coaching. I don't actually do as much one-to-one coaching anymore because of time. So I'm about to open up a mastermind at the end of May. So I don't know when this goes out, but it'll more than likely be available where you could sign up, either be put on the waiting list. My greatest impact is in group coaching. I really believe we need to go back to basics in that community element, share stories, create safe spaces, respect, learn how to deal with things when they don't go to plan. So that's something I'm really excited about offering in the next couple of months. But if people are really like, no, I want to do one-on-one, you should be able to book a session with me via my website and just explain where you are and what you want to be. Most of the time, people figure out very quickly in that 20-minute call what they think they need. Or whether it's a work with me now or work with me later. But outside of that, go follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and I'm always giving alternative views for you to ponder. And for me, that's the biggest part of self-empowerment. I genuinely do not want to be anyone's forever go-to, maybe to kickstart, but I want you to be empowered so you can pass the baton on to the next person, and we can stop being a group of people who need to wait for the next person to give us that nectar feeding or that, pearls of wisdom. At some point, we're going to have to generate that wisdom ourselves.
Amazing, inspiring. I love it. I'm so glad to know about you. Everyone go follow her, check her workout and her book as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And to everyone else, we'll see you next time.
Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/LRUS for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.